And then this is it, 9:30. This is the big one. A lot of people's match that they were looking forward to the most all Friday night. Bryan Danielson versus Minoru Suzuki. 9:30 start with a 30-minute time limit, so you definitely had the feeling that they were going long. And interesting because this was on YouTube, you can see exactly how many people are watching live at the moment. So at the start of this match, we had about 80,000 people watching on YouTube. How do you think that number? What do you assess about a number like that, John?
I mean, I look at this was a major name in Danielson, and I just think that you had this peaked at just over 98,400 people, and you would have had probably at minimum 8 times that watching this on TNT. And I just think that this match, I think it would have been best served on the actual show. If you started it commercial free with Danielson and Suzuki, I think that would have been the best placement for it. It was cool that they put it on YouTube, that everyone had access to it, but we saw what the live numbers are. It's hard because we don't really have a comparison for something of this nature, like a big match put on YouTube, first run with head-to-head competition. This is kind of a bit of an anomaly for AEW, but I do think that this would have been this was the big match that I think a lot of people were looking forward to tonight, and I think it was just a case they did not want to interrupt their lineup for Rampage that they had set. And you did have the 6-man. I think you had to keep that intact. You had promoted Punk, and it would have been a case of do you put this in and Punk and Matt Sydal is your bridge in the middle of the show. I think that would have been my call to put it on TV.
Well, ultimately, you look at a move like this of putting this match on this show, and you really do wonder again, what is Tony Khan's aim? On the surface, it just feels like, okay, you're going to go run head to head with us. We're going to try to take a bite out of your viewership. But clearly, I mean, 80,000, 98,000 on YouTube of hardcore
which is a
fans.
worldwide number too.
A worldwide number. That's not going to take a significant chunk out of, exactly. Like, we're not even localizing how many people are watching in the US here. So ultimately, what is Tony Khan's aim here? Is he looking to take a bite out of the rating, which I don't think he had a hope of with the YouTube match between, Minoru Suzuki and Bryan Danielson?
It probably helped the walk up a little bit for Miami. I mean, there's that.
Or was it also to just, claim the night on the Twitter discussion? You might have the better rating, but we have the better critically acclaimed matchup over the evening. Could that be it?
I just look at, you're looking at which match commercial free that Rampage starts off with. I mean, Punk's matches have done very well on TV. There's no disputing that. I think this starting off, it would have been where I would have gone. I would have started Rampage off commercial free with this.
So to start the match, there are AEW chants, there are "This is awesome" chants. It's exactly the type of dream match scenario that we've seen so many times when we see two people standing in the ring in front of each other for the very first time. It really is electric and it really is amazing in that arena. They start things off with some great looking grappling exchanges. Bryan was able to hook in a knee bar before Suzuki was able to roll to the ropes. Bryan shoots for an ankle pick and dragon screw attempt, but Suzuki rolls with it. Bryan responds with a big kick as Suzuki mentions for more. And this is the beginning of one of 10,000 strikes delivered from both men, simply standing in the middle of the ring, goading the other to attack. Suzuki pie faces Bryan and then just offers up his chest. And this is when the crowd recognizes it and they shush the entire arena. A loud chop by Suzuki as Bryan responds with a big kick to his chest. More chops, more kicks. Suzuki then winds up and delivers a brutal forearm shot to Bryan that knocks Bryan right down. Suzuki controls Bryan on the floor until Bryan comes back with a running knee off the apron. Back in the ring, some amazing facial expressions from Suzuki as he goads Bryan to deliver more kicks. Bryan grabs both wrists, does his stomps, and then applies cattle mutilation. There was, I think, some really great commentary here from Excalibur and Taz, with Excalibur noting that Suzuki specifically wasn't fully in the hold because he was not fully flattened out on the ground. Taz was able to also offer further insight into the defense that Suzuki had for the cattle mutilation, which I thought was really great here. So Bryan hits a running drop kick. Suzuki responds with a running boot, and then a PK, which Bryan no sells, and then another PK, which Bryan guts out of it, each time coming out of it slower. And then finally, a third PK finally keeps Bryan down for a 2 count. Suzuki locks in a Fujiwara armbar, but Bryan gets the ropes. Suzuki toys with Remsburg, but then is caught in the label lock. And then we get some really nice little micro battles in here within the submissions, with guys not simply locking in the submissions, but fighting to complete them by putting that limb in its final position. More forearm exchanges between the two as Suzuki even ties his arms behind his back to allow Bryan, free reign to chop his chest. Hard slaps from both men until one from them simultaneously knocks each other down, and then more forearms. And then in the middle of eating one, Bryan simply just goes to the crowd and says, "Come on, Miami, let's go." And this crowd just roars. More crazy shots. They're saying yay, yay, boo, but instead they're saying see and no to all of these shots. Suzuki goes behind with a sleeper, goes for the gotch as Bryan escapes and attempts the label. Another escape and another gotch attempt, which Bryan escapes. They each then run the ropes as Suzuki hunts for his drop kick or another go behind, but Bryan meets him instead with a Busaiku knee for the victory. This thing, as John mentioned, hit about 98,000 for the finish on YouTube, and in time went about 20 minutes here, just a 1918, the time from Cage Match. So you got to watch the match, John. What'd you think?
I thought it was just a tremendous match. I thought that the two styles gelled so well together, and I loved the little battles with like the PKs and each trying to just sit up from the other's offense and then finally going down. Suzuki was excellent in this. As Danielson, they just gelled so well together. I would say if we were comparing this to, like, this to me would be not at the top, but this would be probably in the top 10 of the G1 matches that we have seen, and probably 6 or 7 maybe. This was at that level to me. It's, if you're comparing it to like Danielson and Omega, that's an extremely high bar. I don't think it was that level, but goddamn, if you're going to come a little under that, this was another spectacular TV match for Bryan Danielson in AEW.
To me, like, even it simply being a G1 caliber match, you add the setting and the atmosphere to it and the dream match scenario to it. It's one thing for me to see, like, okay, I don't know, like Okada versus Tanahashi reach that level. I've seen that match a million times. I have not seen, I haven't even seen their first match. So I've never personally seen Minoru Suzuki versus Bryan Danielson. And I sure as hell haven't seen them, in their current incarnations in an AEW setting. So the setting, I thought, and the atmosphere with this crowd really kind of elevated this thing to dream match status, and it felt incredibly special. And when you have a match of this quality deliver to meet that dream match expectation, and in many cases, to me, exceeding it, like, you get extra points. Like, it might not have technically been necessarily a better match than many of the G1 matches, but I will probably remember this one far more than almost anything that I saw in the G1 this year. And it really did feel magical. It felt like, for me, like a setting where neither Suzuki nor Bryan had the restrictions of television, nor the restrictions of a house style to limit them from doing exactly the type of match that they want to do. And to me, like, by far, it's the best Suzuki match in AEW, maybe the best Suzuki match I've seen in a long, long time. I have not seen anything outside of AEW in his current US run, but this was outstanding. And I think, like, you brought up the Kenny match, and definitely debatable, like, whether or not this was better than that. And maybe most people would say no, but I felt like, for a personal performance from Bryan Danielson, I thought this was the best he looked. The Kenny match was a great match, but to me, it felt like that was still Bryan playing a WWE version of Bryan. This, to me, felt like he was very comfortable and very violent here. Like, he unleashed at a level that I don't think I really saw in the Kenny match. He took punishment that I don't think I saw at the level of in the Kenny match. And in a short amount of time, like, he's really amassed quite the catalog of, like, dream opponents and also quality matches that have lived up to those expectations.
When you're looking at Punk and Danielson, because now we've got several matches in, is there a value to spacing their matches out more? Or do you think that it's going to be, like with Punk, like this is, 2 weeks in a row, he's doing matches. It's you are in this competitive environment that those are two easy guys to go to. Like what do you think is the best utilization of these two for maximum value and impact?
Well, I do think they do typically space them out. Like you don't, it's pretty rare, like other than on a big show where you might get a Bryan and a Punk wrestling on the same night. Like this, I don't think was supposed to be a Bryan Punk night. I think it was strictly going to be a Punk night, and tomorrow you're going to get the Bryan match. But because of the circumstances, they really loaded this one. Same with Grand Slam. That was a big show where you had both. Whether or not you would see more value in terms of ratings by separating them further, I don't really know. Because on the one hand, I think it's inevitable that like their appearances get less and less special the more we see of them. But I also don't necessarily feel like that's going to be diminished that much by spacing them apart when you can really use the boost for a lot of these ratings right now. And secondly, in the case of both men, but in particular Punk, like he's a guy who I think could really use the in-ring time to just kind of get back up, whether it be cardio or just, in terms of style. So I like the fact that we have one of their matches to look forward to every single week. But as we get further along, perhaps it is debatable whether or not you want to space them out, especially with the amount of talent that you have.
Yeah, I think like there's definitely a happy medium there that maybe you don't have a Danielson wrestling every single week, but it's also the level of opponents that, I mean, all these matches are going to be so unique to varying degrees. And I think when you have something big that you can pull out of your pocket, like a Minoru Suzuki, regardless, it's going to feel big. And when you can let them go out there for 20, 25 minutes as well and have the kind of format to do that as well, I think that will greatly benefit them when they can do this. So,
like it certainly feels like they're getting more airtime than, let's say, like a Kenny Omega match. Like they have still protected those, like a Kenny Omega singles match in their run. They have protected those pretty well. So I don't know if it's just strictly because he's champion right now, but I feel like maybe in the future you can kind of cycle, like let's say when Bryan becomes champion, okay? Like maybe he takes on that role where he only wrestles once a month. And then you kind of cycle Kenny into this spot where he's sort of your weekly guy. Yeah.
And the tour continues for Minoru Suzuki that goes to Philadelphia on Sunday for New Japan Strong, teaming with Archer against Moxley and Kingston. He's now added Impact dates.
Dude, like...
He's got that Dominic Garrini match coming up.
He is more active, like, in 2 months than most wrestlers are in America, like American wrestlers are in a whole year. That is incredible, that schedule. I don't know how his body's able to, like, do a quality match of this type and then still, like, travel and do a match at his
This should be a documentary. Someone should be following him.
Yeah, incredible.
Because this is a really spectacular tour that he's been on, and these 2 months of just these matches and this that just comes out of nowhere. It's just really impressive to watch. He's trying to make a strong case to repeat as my wrestler of the year.
Yeah.